Now listen, if you have been waiting for the receipts, this is the exact moment the whole industry has been dodging for a full calendar year, because Drake just did something on that live stream that nobody, and I mean nobody in Toronto, is going to be able to spin away this time. Drake just walked away from hip-hop on camera, in real time, with a chrome bracelet flexing on his wrist and a grandmother's necklace swinging from his neck, and the sad part is he thought he was winning while he was doing it. Drake stood there, half laughing, half panicking, throwing out these hollow one-liners like a man auditioning for a comedy special that nobody asked for, and every single frame of it read the same way. Drake is done. Drake is cooked. Drake is finished. And the one man who cooked him did not even have to log on to watch it. Because while Drake was up there rambling about diamond crosses on jeans and Cartier bracelets your grandma would recognize, Kendrick Lamar was thousands of miles away, quiet as a monk, moving pieces on a board Drake did not even know existed. And that is the part that should terrify Toronto tonight. Kendrick did not respond. Kendrick did not tweet. Kendrick did not drop. Kendrick did not have to. Because Drake, God bless him, is now the algorithm's favorite unpaid intern, doing Kendrick's dirty work for free every single time he opens a live stream. Hit that like, lock in that subscribe, because what we are about to unpack is the cleanest, most surgical takedown a rapper has ever eaten in public without the executioner ever needing to show his face. Now the narrative machine has been trying to sell you a fantasy for months. The narrative machine has been telling you Iceman is a hit. The narrative machine has been telling you Drake is thriving. The narrative machine has been telling you 3 albums in 12 months is a flex and not a fire alarm. Pull the lens back on this whole thing and you will see the exact opposite. The Iceman's puddle just got wider. That album has been sliding down the charts like a man on wet stairs, and the streaming numbers are not even bothering to lie for him anymore. Drake is now dropping projects with the emotional stamina of a man mailing rent checks. Hello and goodbye, in and out, next one loading, next one flopping, next one already forgotten by the time the next one shows up. And here is the part the OVO faithful cannot stomach. Drake, out of his own mouth, told on himself. Drake, out of his own mouth, confessed that he is no longer a rapper. Drake, out of his own mouth, transformed into a full-time content creator, wearing chains too heavy for the room. When Drake said, and I am paraphrasing here so nobody sues me, that he is dropping albums like drive-through orders and that the pen is not dry, he was not threatening Kendrick. Kendrick does not hear that. Kendrick does not feel that. Kendrick is not in that frequency anymore. Drake was threatening himself because every word he spoke on that stream sounded less like a rapper and more like a stand-up comic who forgot the punchline. That is where we are now. That is the state of the culture. Drake has become a comedian who accidentally still has a record deal, and the entire live stream felt like a comedy set gone off the rails without a single laugh from the room. Drake giggled at his own jokes. Drake pointed at his own chains for applause that never came. Drake mentioned prices to justify a presence that no longer needs justifying. And in the middle of all of that, one thing was screaming underneath the noise. One thing was flashing brighter than any of the diamonds on his jeans. The money is not moving. The money is not saving him. The money never was the thing. The thing was the pen, and the pen has been broken since Kendrick Lamar decided to put it out of its misery. Now the funny part, and I do mean the darkly funny part, is that Drake still thinks he is on offense. Drake still thinks these little slick lines are landing. Drake still thinks the audience is on his side of the argument. Drake still thinks the culture forgot what happened in May of last year. The culture did not forget. The culture etched it into a headstone. Kendrick Lamar folded Drake into an origami crane in front of the entire world, and Drake spent the following year pretending origami was a lifestyle choice. Do this one thing with me before we go deeper. Hit that like button. Lock in that subscribe. Because the second half of this breakdown is where the real bodies are buried, and I promise you, we are going to look at every single one of them. I need you inside the tribe when we get to the coronation moment near the end. Because if you are not subscribed, you will miss the part where I lay out exactly what Kendrick is building in silence right now that is about to make Drake's entire situation feel like a warm-up act. Because see, while Drake was hosting his one-man variety hour, Kendrick was doing something Toronto is not built to survive. Kendrick was building. Kendrick was quietly stacking partnerships nobody was covering on the front page. Kendrick was on the phone with executives, while Drake was on Instagram Live with a mirror. Kendrick was signing paperwork while Drake was signing autographs on his own bracelets. And when the receipts finally roll out on what Kendrick has been touching, the OVO camp is going to look up and realize they were fighting a magician while pretending it was still a rap battle. And this is where the tape starts to hurt. Because there is a specific tell in Drake's stream, and if you were paying attention, you already caught it. Drake mentioned 3 albums like it was a victory lap, but the way he said it, the cadence, the smirk, the little flick of the wrist, was the exact vocal signature a person uses when they are trying to convince themselves before they convince the room. Drake was not celebrating. Drake was auditioning. Drake was asking the internet for permission to still be relevant. And the internet, quietly, is starting to say no. Not with hate. Not with rage. Not with beef. With something worse. With drift. The audience has started drifting. And in this industry, drift kills faster than any diss track ever will. Now let me be clear on one thing before the OVO comment squad boots up. This is not about hating Drake as a human being. Drake as a melodic architect is real. Drake as a hitmaker of a specific era is documented. Drake as a pop crossover engineer has receipts nobody can dispute. But Drake, as a rapper who writes his own bars, has been on trial for a decade and the jury just came back. The jury said no. The jury said Kendrick Lamar was telling the truth the whole time. And the sentencing hearing is now a live stream Drake keeps hosting for himself every week, on his own dime, on his own timeline, on his own network. Because think about what actually happened on that broadcast. Drake had a global microphone. Drake had a viral moment on tap. Drake had the eyes of every hip-hop podcast, every rap blog, every timeline in the culture. And what did Drake do at that moment? He talked about a necklace. He talked about a bracelet. He talked about a diamond cross. He talked about brand names. He talked about grandmothers. He talked about everything except rap. He talked about everything except craft. He talked about everything except art. And in a genre that eats its own kings the second they stop feeding the culture, that is the loudest surrender bell you can ring. The narrative machine has been trying to spin this as confidence. Confidence does not require inventory. Confidence does not require price tags. Confidence does not require public affirmations of wealth. When Drake keeps naming brands like he is running a shopping channel, that is not a flex. That is a search for oxygen. That is a man drowning quietly and describing the water as he goes under. And every rap fan with a functioning ear picked up on it the second the words left his mouth. Now Kendrick, meanwhile, is playing a completely different sport. Kendrick is not on a live stream reading price tags. Kendrick is not on a podcast defending himself. Kendrick is not tweeting subliminals. Kendrick is not scrolling comments. Kendrick is not looking backwards at all. Kendrick has spent the last 12 months constructing a wall around his life that no OVO leak, no Charlemagne segment, no Joe Budden monologue, no industry whisper can penetrate. Kendrick understood something the rest of the game forgot. He understood that the loudest man in the room is almost always the most nervous. Because see, that is the real lesson buried under every silly line Drake dropped on that stream. Drake keeps performing certainty because Drake has run out of the real thing. And every rapper watching, every young MC studying the game, every executive tracking the shifts, they all clocked it in real time. The room clocked it. The blogs clocked it. Even the OVO defenders, deep down, clocked it. Nobody wanted to say it out loud, because saying it out loud makes it official. So the culture has been whispering it instead. And now, we are going to say it on the record. Drake is not the biggest artist in hip-hop anymore. Drake is not the frontrunner anymore. Drake is not the standard anymore. Drake is a legacy act that thinks it is still a headliner. And that is what makes the Kendrick silence so devastating. Kendrick does not need to release a diss. Kendrick does not need to book a Charlemagne interview. Kendrick does not need to leak a text message. Kendrick is winning by breathing. Every day Kendrick does not respond is another day the ceiling drops on Drake by half an inch. Every week Kendrick stays off social media is another week the momentum sinks into concrete. Kendrick is playing chess with time itself, and time is the only opponent Drake has never figured out how to negotiate with. Now let us talk about what happens next, because this is where the story starts bending toward a place OVO does not want to go. Drake, at this point, has 2 lanes left. Lane 1 is to stop rapping and pivot into pure entertainment. Comedy specials, acting roles, podcast appearances, reality-adjacent content. It is a real option. The man is naturally funny when he is not trying. The man has screen presence. The man has cash with a global audience that grew up on him. The pen replaced the puppet strings a long time ago, and the puppet strings can be repurposed. Lane 1 is dignified. Lane 1 is generational money. Lane 1 is a soft landing. Lane 2 is the Delusion Tour. Lane 2 is more live streams. Lane 2 is more Iceman sequels that peak at number 4 and vanish by Tuesday. Lane 2 is arguing with anonymous accounts on the timeline. Lane 2 is subliminal chess moves with rappers who do not know they are on the board. Lane 2 is chasing a shadow of a moment that already ended in front of the whole world. And every single week Drake picks Lane 2 is another week he ages out of the only room he ever cared about being in. Hit that like button right now if you have made it this far, because the next stretch is where we get into the executive level breakdown, and this is the part the OVO analysts do not want you to hear. The reason Kendrick's silence is so dangerous is not just artistic. It is business. Because Kendrick understood earlier than anyone else in the current class that in the streaming era, availability is currency and scarcity is empire. Drake is availability. Drake is on tap. Drake is downloadable. Drake is downloadable to the point of oversupply. And when the market is oversupplied, prices fall. Streams fall. Attention falls. Cultural weight falls. Kendrick is scarcity. Kendrick is the missed call you keep staring at. Kendrick is the album drop nobody predicts. Kendrick is the Super Bowl performance you had to be there for. Kendrick is the interview that never happens. Kendrick is the tweet that never lands. And in a marketplace built on infinite content, the artist who withholds is the artist who wins. That is why Kendrick is quietly outperforming Drake across every metric that actually matters to the culture, not just the ones the streaming charts flash on Tuesday mornings. Now let me hit you with the part that is going to make some of you type angry comments before you even finish the sentence. Drake, at this point, is not competing with Kendrick anymore. Drake is competing with the memory of Drake. Every Drake album drop is a comparison against the version of Drake that ran the entire decade of 2015 to 2022. Every Drake single is a stress test against Best I Ever Had, against Marvin's Room, against Nice for What, against a catalog that used to be untouchable. And nobody, not even Drake at his best, is winning that fight. It is Drake versus Prime Drake, and Prime Drake is undefeated. And that is why the chrome bracelets look so heavy on the wrist. It is not the weight of the metal. It is the weight of the comparison. Every time Drake steps in front of a camera now, he is fighting a ghost of himself who is funnier, sharper, hungrier, and more feared. That ghost is undefeated. That ghost cannot be distracked. That ghost cannot be sued. That ghost cannot be paid off. That ghost is Kendrick's most powerful ally, and Kendrick did not even have to hire him. The receipts do not blink, and here is one of the loudest ones. Look at what the industry itself is doing. Look at who Kendrick is being invited into rooms with. Look at what brands are quietly pulling back from the OVO orbit. Look at what publications, the same publications that used to slobber over every Drake project, are now framing him with words like fatigue, exhaustion, and repetition. That vocabulary shift is a career forecast. Publications do not attack legends. Publications attack legends who are already halfway to legacy status. Publications only start using the word decline when the decline has already happened and everyone else has confirmed it in private. Now Charlemagne, whether you agree with him or not, said something recently that I want you to sit with. Charlemagne said Drake is at the tail end of an era. And a lot of people brushed that off as content. It is not content. That is a man who has been in the room for 2 decades telling you what the room already agreed on. When Charlemagne pulls the fire alarm publicly, it means the private group chat has been on fire for months. And every insider you follow knows it. They just have not said it on camera yet because they are still holding out for one last favor, one last collab, one last check. And here is the crazy part. Kendrick is not going to celebrate any of this. Kendrick is not going to gloat. Kendrick is not going to do a lap. Because that is not the character. Kendrick already told you the character in every album. Kendrick already told you in Damn. Kendrick already told you in Mr. Morale. Kendrick already told you in X. Kendrick is not here to win an argument. Kendrick is here to change the terms of the argument. And he has done it. Look around. The genre is quieter. The battles are colder. The pen has weighed again. The lyricists are getting their flowers again. The industry is being forced to answer for the ghostwriter era it pretended never happened. That is a cultural shift, not a career update. And Drake is on the wrong side of it. Drake is on the wrong side of a change that is bigger than any single album he could ever drop. Because even if Drake drops the greatest album of his life tomorrow, the culture has already moved. The furniture has already been rearranged. The lights have already been dimmed. The room has already made up its mind about who the architect of the next decade is. And it is not the man on the live stream with a chrome bracelet. Now I want you to comment below and be honest with me. Do you think Drake can recover from this? Not survive. Recover. Because those are 2 different words. Anyone can survive in hip-hop. You can be Ja Rule and survive. You can be Bow Wow and survive. But recovery is different. Recovery means climbing back to the top of the mountain you already fell off of. Recovery means being feared again. Recovery means being cited by rappers under the age of 25 as the reason they started rapping in the first place. And that number, the citation number, is dropping every month for Drake. The next generation is not naming him anymore. The next generation is naming Kendrick. The next generation is naming Cole. The next generation is naming Baby Keem. The next generation is naming names that do not include Toronto at the top. That is a data point. That is a signal. That is a receipt. And receipts do not blink. Meanwhile, we cannot ignore the elephant in the corner of the room, and the elephant has a name, and the name is Jay-Z. Now I have watched Joe Budden and half the podcast circuit try to build a Jay-Z versus Drake storyline, and I want to be honest with you about that. Jay is not going to war with Drake. Jay does not need to. Jay is in a different atmosphere. Jay is doing sports deals. Jay is doing perfume. Jay is doing Broadway. Jay is doing culture at a level Drake has never touched and has stopped pretending to. But if Drake ever pushes Jay too far, and I mean too far, that scoreboard is going to look uglier than the Kendrick round. Because Jay-Z was never a personality first. Jay was a pen first. And when a pen wakes up angry, entire careers get archived overnight. I do not want that battle to happen, and I doubt Jay would ever indulge it. But I need you to sit with the fact that Drake is now creating enemies faster than he is creating hits. And in this industry, at this altitude, enemies compound. Enemies stack. Enemies wait. Enemies remember. And every silly line Drake throws on a live stream is another deposit in a bank account he is going to have to answer for later. Now let me answer the question I know some of you are typing right now. Am I a Kendrick stan? No. I am a hip-hop fan. I am a bars fan. I am a craft fan. I am a pen fan. And whichever direction the pen tilts, that is the direction I am going to walk. Right now, the pen is tilted so hard toward Kendrick that even the OVO writers, the real ones, the anonymous ones, the ones who never get credit, are quietly acknowledging the shift. Ask around. Ask the people who write for the writers. Ask the assistants. Ask the engineers. Ask the room. The room voted. Kendrick got the room. And that is what this whole storyline has always been about. It was never about a single diss. It was never about a single line. It was never about a single hook. It was about who the room votes for. Because in hip-hop, the room decides who is a rapper and who is an entertainer. Drake fought for the room for a decade and won it. Kendrick took it back in 8 months without a single interview. Hit that like button. Lock in that subscribe. Because I am about to give you the piece nobody in the podcast circuit has said out loud yet, and this is the part that reframes the entire Iceman era for you forever. Ready? Here it is. The Iceman was never for the culture. The Iceman was for the algorithm. The Iceman was a content strategy dressed up as an album cycle. The Iceman was designed to feed streaming numbers, feed press cycles, feed engagement metrics, and it did none of those things well. Because the culture, the actual culture, does not respond to content strategies. The culture responds to feeling. And there is no feeling in an album that was built to be a spreadsheet. Kendrick's projects are feeling first, spreadsheet never. And the audience, especially the younger audience, can smell the difference from 3 miles away. Gen Z does not care about how many features you got. Gen Z cares about whether the song feels like something. Gen Z cares about whether the artist means it. Gen Z cares about whether the pen is honest. And on all 3 of those measurements, Drake is losing by widening margins every single quarter. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in a moment where the man once called the biggest artist in the world is standing on a live stream describing bracelets, while the man who dethroned him is building institutions in silence. It leaves us in a moment where OVO is running a nostalgia tour and pretending it is a legacy expansion. It leaves us in a moment where the pen is loud again and the puppet strings are being cut on live television. It leaves us in a moment where Drake fans have to make peace with something they never wanted to say out loud. Kendrick was right the entire time. And Drake, whether he ever admits it or not, is going to spend the rest of his career trying to outrun a verdict that was already delivered. Now let us zoom in on the actual mechanics of what Drake did wrong on that stream, because the tape is a textbook of how not to hold a room in the year we are living in. Drake broke the first rule of legacy artists. The first rule is never explain your wealth. When a legend has to explain the price tag, the legend is not a legend anymore. Drake broke the second rule. The second rule is never mention the opponent by proxy. Every time Drake subtweeted the beef with a slick line, he handed Kendrick another win, because Kendrick was not in the room and yet was the only person the room was thinking about. Drake broke the third rule. The third rule is never smile at your own jokes. And Drake was cackling at his own bracelets like a man watching a home video by himself. And you know what the most terrifying part of that whole broadcast was? It was the silence in the chat during the pauses. Drake would drop a line, expect the emojis to flood, and there was a beat, a full beat of nothing. That is a diagnostic moment. In the platform ecosystem, a stalled chat is a heart monitor going flat. The audience did not disagree. The audience did not agree. The audience was simply not there anymore. They were physically present and emotionally gone, which is the exact frequency an artist hits right before the market forecloses on them. And here is what nobody in the podcast circle wants to say out loud, so I am going to say it here first. Drake's biggest problem is not Kendrick. Kendrick is the symptom, not the disease. The disease is that Drake spent a decade optimizing for algorithms and forgot to build a soul that can survive a nostalgia cycle. Every Drake era has been engineered around the current playlist logic of the current streaming platform. Take care logic. Nothing was the same logic. Views logic. Scorpion logic. Certified lover boy logic. Honestly nevermind logic. Iceman logic. Every era rewired to the machine of that moment. And the moment you build your identity around the machine can retire you the second it decides to rewrite itself. Which is exactly what is happening in real time. The machine has rewritten itself. And Drake was not sent the memo. Kendrick, meanwhile, built for the human. Kendrick built for the person in the room. Kendrick built for the 20-year-old in Compton who needs the song to mean something. Kendrick built for the 40-year-old in Detroit who needs the album to hold a mirror up. Kendrick built for permanence, not placement. And permanence outlives every algorithm reset the industry has ever gone through. Do you understand what that means for the next 5 years? It means Drake is going to keep dropping and keep sinking, not because the songs are worse, but because the yardstick has been replaced. It means Kendrick is going to keep releasing less and dominating more, because scarcity is the new luxury and Kendrick has been rehearsing scarcity his entire career. It means the entire model of Drake being the biggest artist in the world was borrowed against a version of the music business that is no longer running the plant. It means the invoice is due. And Toronto is the address on the invoice. Comment down below if you feel me on any of this, because I want to hear it in the replies. Tell me the exact moment you knew Drake was cooked. Was it Not Like Us on repeat at the wedding? Was it the Super Bowl stage? Was it the Grammy sweep? Was it the Iceman rollout? Was it the chrome bracelet? Tell me. Because every one of you has a specific moment burned into your memory, and I want to see them line up in the replies so we can build a timeline of the fall in real time. And here is what should scare Drake more than any diss ever could. Kendrick does not need to make music to keep beating Drake. Kendrick can literally sit still and continue to accumulate cultural interest because the compound interest of a Kendrick win is astronomical. Every week Kendrick does not release music, the mystique grows. Every week the mystique grows, the next release becomes more of an event. Every event that hits amplifies the last one. It is a snowball rolling downhill in a genre where Drake is standing at the bottom trying to catch it with a comedy stand-up mic in his hand. Now let me touch on something else, because I know somebody in the comments is about to bring it up. Let us address the collaboration graph. Look at who Kendrick is in the room with. Look at the visual language of PG Lang. Look at the people who narrate their films. Look at the people who direct their music videos. Look at the players who narrate their sports campaigns. Look at the directors, the cinematographers, the writers. Every single one of them is a top-shelf, world-class craftsperson operating at the highest level of their discipline. Kendrick has built a Rolodex of excellence. Now look at Drake's Rolodex. Look at who Drake collaborates with. Look at the same rotation of features. Look at the same producers. Look at the same podcasters. Look at the same influencers. Look at the same recycled visual language of yacht clips, mansion clips, and bracelet close-ups. It is a Rolodex that has not evolved since 2017. And in a culture that moves at the speed of Gen Z attention, a stagnant Rolodex is a career death sentence in slow motion. And that is another reason why the Iceman rollout landed with the emotional impact of a rerun. Because you had already seen every promo image. You had already heard every guest verse. You had already predicted every single move. The rollout was the definition of anti-mystery in a genre that has always thrived on mystery. Compare that to a Kendrick release, where nobody has any idea what the visuals will look like, what the sonics will sound like, what the collaborators will be, what the cover art will be, what the tour will be, what the merchandise will be, what the film component will be. Kendrick treats a release like a director unveiling a film. Drake treats a release like a merchandise drop on a Shopify page. And listen, if you are still on Drake's side after all of this, and I respect you being here, I really do, I need you to answer one question honestly in the comments. When was the last Drake song that made you feel something? Not something you played once. Something you actually felt. Something that grabbed a real memory. Something that soundtracked a real moment in your life. If you can name one from the last 3 years, I want to hear it. Because I have asked this question in every comment section, and the answers keep going backwards in time. Nobody names last year. Everybody names 2016. Everybody names 2013. Everybody names the version of Drake that no longer exists. That is not a hater's take. That is a data reality. And the data reality is the loudest verdict a rapper can ever receive. Now let us pull the camera back one more time, because this is the part one need every OVO defender in the comments to sit within silence for a moment. Drake did not lose because of a diss track. Drake did not lose because of a Grammy sweep. Drake did not lose because of a Super Bowl performance. Drake lost because the culture found somebody it trusted more. Trust is the only currency in this business that cannot be bought with a chrome bracelet or a Cartier chain. Trust is earned in the small moments, in the pauses, in the choices to stay quiet, in the moments where an artist could have spoken and chose not to. Kendrick has been earning that trust for a decade in silence. Drake has been spending it in real time on live streams. And when the trust account empties, the music stops working. It is that simple. That is the mechanic. That is the equation. That is the receipt. And receipts do not blink. Now the delay on this video, I owe you a quick word on that. Life happened this month. Systems went sideways. Storms rolled through the region, power flickered in and out, upload schedules got scrambled, and a lot of you were kind enough to check in. I appreciate every single one of you for that. To the folks in the parts of the country still cleaning up from all of it, hang in there. Send whatever help you can spare toward the local relief efforts. Small money moves mountains when it lands in the right hands. But we are back now. We are locked in. And the schedule is going to be tighter than it has ever been from this point forward, because there is too much happening in the culture to slow down. Kendrick has more moves coming. Drake has more live streams coming. OVO has more spin coming. And I am going to be sitting right here to break every single beat of it apart in real time, with no chaser, no filter, no favoritism, and no punches pulled. Now here is the part one need to flag for the day ones. The next 12 months of this story are going to make the last 12 months look like the calm before the storm. Because we are entering the phase where the industry has to publicly pick a side. Not privately. Publicly. And that is when things get uncomfortable. Every executive is going to have to answer for whose calls they take. Every playlist curator is going to have to answer for who they lead with. Every award show is going to have to answer for how they distribute the trophies. Every festival is going to have to answer for who gets the headliner slot. The whispers will become announcements. The announcements will become verdicts. And the verdicts will become the historical record. And I want to be very clear about who is going to be on the wrong side of that historical record. It is not going to be Kendrick. It is going to be everybody who backed Drake past the point where the receipts had already piled up. Because history does not judge you for the position you took when the truth was unknown. History judges you for the position you held after the truth became undeniable. And the truth about Drake has been undeniable for a while now. The only question is whether the people around him have the courage to admit it before their own reputations get downgraded in the process. That is what makes this era so interesting. This is not just Drake versus Kendrick anymore. This is team trust versus team convenience. This is craft versus comfort. This is pen versus playlist. And every single artist, every single executive, every single podcaster, every single blogger, every single fan is being forced to answer the question in real time. Which side did you back when it mattered? Comment down below and tell me which side you were on. Be honest. Nobody is going to shame you here. This is a room for grown fans of the culture to have grown conversations. If you were Team Drake, say so. If you switched, say so. If you were always Team Kendrick, say so. If you do not care about either and you just love the genre, say so. I want the timeline to reflect the truth of where the audience actually stands, not the sanitized version the press keeps trying to sell. So while you are here, 3 things. 1. Drop me a comment. Tell me what you think Drake's next move should be. Comedy pivot, delusion tour, or full retirement statement. Be honest. Be specific. Tell me the exact plan you would give Drake if you were the executive with his ear. 2. Hit that like button so this breakdown gets pushed into the timelines of the people who need to see it, because there are OVO defenders out there who genuinely still believe the Iceman is thawing back into a hit, and they deserve to see the math laid out clean. And 3. Subscribe if you are not subscribed yet, because the next breakdown I am dropping is going to unpack the specific business move Kendrick is finalizing right now that is going to make everything we just talked about look like the warm-up. And now check out the video I put right there on your screen, because it walks through the exact moment the Kendrick versus Drake battle stopped being a battle and turned into a coronation. If you thought this breakdown was heavy, that one is a scalpel. Watch it back to back with this one and the whole picture will click into place. Because this is the era we are in now. The narrative machine can spin. The live streams can loop. The chrome can shine. The bracelets can flash. But the pen has already picked a side. And the pen does not argue. The pen decides. And once the pen decides, the story is already over. Drake just does not know it yet. Or maybe he does. Maybe that is why the smile on that live stream looked so tired. Maybe that is why the jokes landed so flat. Maybe that is why the chrome felt so heavy. Maybe, deep down, Drake already read the ending. And maybe that is why he keeps hosting the same stream, week after week, telling the same joke, wearing the same jewelry, pretending the ceiling is not quietly lowering itself over his head. The Iceman is not melting anymore. The Iceman has melted. The puddle is drying. And when the puddle dries, all that will be left is the pen. Kendrick's pen. Waiting. Patient. Silent. Loaded. Ready for the next chapter of a book Drake stopped being the author of a long time ago. And I want to leave you with one more thought before I let you go, because this is the sentence that will not leave my head no matter how many times I try to shake it. The scariest thing about Kendrick Lamar is not what he has done. It is what he has not done yet. Because everything we have watched play out over the last 12 months has been Kendrick on cruise control. That was not the ceiling. That was the warm-up. Kendrick has not run a full campaign yet. Kendrick has not pulled the film release yet. Kendrick has not launched the fashion arm yet. Kendrick has not activated the executive lane fully yet. Kendrick has not made his own imprint the loudest room in music yet. Every one of those levers is still in reserve. And when he pulls even one of them, the conversation is going to move again. And Drake will still be on the live stream, pointing at a bracelet, asking the chat to make some noise. That is the picture. That is the frame. That is the future. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So do not try. Just accept the receipt, look at the timeline, and understand that the culture has already turned the page. The book has a new author. His name is on the spine in quiet ink.